Why are they doing this? Well, there's two reasons. Climate change is going to be bad for China and the rest of the world, but perhaps even number one, not number two, this they see as an economic opportunity for China. China, there's an official tally of what's called high technology manufacturing. Includes aerospace, pharmaceuticals, test equipment, electronics, things that you generally regard as high technology manufacturing. China has passed Europe and the United States in leading in high technology manufacturing in the last couple of years. They see a transition to a green energy economy, developing a solar, a wind, a high voltage transmission system as something where they want to be the world leader in. Okay? So they're pushing because they see incredible economic opportunity. Now, this is where China's going. This is where a lot of European countries have gone in the past. China's being very aggressive about it. Incredible. They're now leading the world in high voltage electricity transmission over longer distances.
So do you sense that China will commit to some sort of carbon reductions?
Well, I don't know, but I would hope yes. If you look at what they're doing internally, when they say they have a target, right now their current 5-year plan is to increase better their energy intensity. So as their GDP grows, their use of energy per growth of GDP will be decreasing by 20%. That's this 5-year plan. Another 5-year plan, again, a very aggressive schedule. But now they're talking for the following 5-year plan of saying it will be a carbon emission to GDP. Now, why is that significant? Because they're pushing very heavily on hydro, renewable like wind and solar, and nuclear. And so if you just take what they're already saying about where they want to go on non-carbon emitting sources of energy plus energy efficiency, you're looking perhaps at 24%, it was an estimate I was seeing, decrease in the amount of carbon emissions per GDP. And there was a committee that recommended somewhere between 4 and 5% to the government. 5% is a very important number because if that compounds annually, that means a 27% decrease in carbon dioxide per GDP. Now, why is that important? Because eventually, in the next couple of decades, China's growth is going to start to level off. They will be easing into a developed economy. A lot of their infrastructure will have been maturing. And you don't expect China's growth to be growing at 8%, forever. It's going to have to taper off. It's going to have to go to a sort of a developed country growth of 3 or 4%. Then once you get that, then and you still have this carbon dioxide to GDP thing. That means they just put themselves on a trajectory that says it's going to cap and decline. But these are the issues that they're now thinking very hard about. But I see my major role is to say, how can the Department of Energy, number one, help the United States become economically competitive in this future clean energy economy? And number two, if we can get partnerships with China, with India, that would be mutually beneficial to both of us to help each other. So it's, instead of worrying about numbers and things, we have to get moving. We definitely, the numbers are important, but we certainly have to get moving. And it's just like the CAFE standard. That's getting moving. And we don't want it to stop at 35.5 miles to gallon. We want to continue those things.
Mr. Secretary, what number for a carbon intensity target from China would impress you? If we might expect China to make such an announcement any day now, what number would impress you?
Well, a number that would impress me, I would have to go back and look at the details, but if I took their already stated energy intensity target,
yes,
and their already stated goals and where they want to be in terms of renewable energy, in terms of nuclear, hydro, wind, solar, all those things, anything that wrapped all those things up together and said we'll be at least there, anything north of that or at that point, so it's a unified, here's where we're going to be, but these are pretty aggressive goals, would be quite a commitment.
The Administration, I know, is somewhat concerned that not to repeat what they call the mistake of Kyoto. Of course, the climate talks in '97 that produced commitments to reduce emissions in developed countries. The United States never signed that, never ratified that, and the Bush administration basically walked away from it. Can you give some assurance that whatever commitment or promise or goal that the president makes at Copenhagen won't also never be ratified, never be approved by Congress? Because congressional debate about climate change is extremely intense at this time, and there's no indication that you all have the 60 votes in the Senate that would be required to pass climate legislation. How concerned are you about that?
Well, going back to it, looking at what, for example, Prime Minister Rasmussen is now saying, realistically, what can we expect out of Copenhagen? A framework, a path forward. You're jumping kind of to an, I wouldn't even say it's an end point. I would say it's the end of the beginning point, which is the beginning of a treaty, a verification, and all these other things. But in the end, I think right now what the Prime Minister is saying is we're not going to expect by time of Copenhagen to have a treaty that we then, the countries go back to their respective legislatures and say, okay, this is what we need ratified. But a path forward so that with the beginning of the end is that. Now I stress the beginning, so the end of the beginning, because in the end, if you look at the experience of Kyoto, where there was treaty terms that were hammered out, several countries did meet their commitments. Others, which did ratify, did not meet their commitments. Some met their commitments because of unforeseen financial issues. And so in the end, not only, a treaty is a beginning, and then you've got to follow through. And so I think you have to look at all these things. And so what we're now saying is what the Prime Minister is saying in the APEC conference, and what I think the world's beginning to realize is you've got to get going. You've got to get going as aggressively as you can. A treaty is an important point in this, but to me, it's certainly a beginning. Now, then you have to execute on that, and every country has to then say we've got to start decreasing our unsustained growth in carbon emissions. And in the United States, because we are a developed country, because we have incredible technical capability, I think we can show leadership, and a leadership that will help us in our economic prosperity.